The only way to take you from the money is by you die, deaf, or in prison. In my case, it's prison. So it's definitely a lot of situations that it's an eye-opener.
Suge Knight knew prison would be dangerous, but not like this. After his sentencing, he was thrown into a cell so notorious, the last 2 inmates reportedly died in the shower. Now he's stuck in a place where every second could be his last. From mental torture to life-threatening conditions, let's break down why Suge Knight's prison cell is way worse than you think. Locked down and forgotten. The reality of Suge's prison cell. Suge is housed in a facility that's bursting at the seams. Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, often called RJD, was designed for about 2,200 inmates, but is currently holding around 3,559. This severe overcrowding means that cells designed for 1 inmate are often housing 2, creating cramped living conditions where privacy is practically non-existent. The standard cells at California prisons are typically small to begin with. We're talking about 6 by 8 feet, roughly the size of a small bathroom. These tiny spaces contain just the bare essentials: a bed or bunk beds in shared cells, a toilet, and a sink. Now imagine being confined to that space for much of your day, especially if you have health issues like Suge does. It's giving sardine can vibes, no cap. Speaking of health issues, this is where Suge's situation gets even more complicated. With his blindness, blood clots, and reported diabetes, Suge would likely require special accommodations and consistent medical care. However, RJD has a troubling history when it comes to treating inmates with disabilities. Court documents from the Armstrong v. Newsom case, which has been ongoing since the 1990s, detail nearly 30 allegations of abuse against disabled inmates in just a 6-month period leading up to February 2020. These allegations include physical assaults, such as officers tipping over wheelchairs, denial of medical care, and neglect of serious needs. A 2020 Voice of San Diego article reported 112 declarations from disabled inmates across 6 California prisons, with 19 specifically from RJD, alleging officers assaulted and terrorized inmates with disabilities. One inmate involved in the lawsuit reportedly died due to staff abuse. Since January 2017, approximately 1,100 complaints have been filed against RJD staff, with only 9 officers terminated for misconduct, all involving disabled inmates. For a man with Suge's health issues, these statistics are more than just numbers. They represent a real threat to his well-being. Imagine being partially blind in an environment where disabled inmates are allegedly targets for abuse. The anxiety and fear that would create is hard to overstate. The medical care situation at RJD is also concerning. Many inmates report long waits for medical attention, inadequate treatment for chronic conditions, and difficulties obtaining necessary medications. For someone with Suge's complex health needs, these deficiencies could potentially be life-threatening. In response to these issues, a 2021 legal settlement in Armstrong v. Newsom aimed to improve conditions at RJD, mandating body-worn cameras for nearly 500 corrections officers and 50 sergeants, installation of nearly 1,000 high-definition cameras in high-traffic areas, increased staffing and training to address misconduct, and court oversight to ensure compliance. Over $90 million has been allocated for these reforms. However, reports suggest that ongoing issues include staff turning off cameras and continued retaliation, with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation appealing to block the settlement, potentially threatening progress. Watchdog reports from 2018 and 2019 highlighted systemic issues, including biased investigations and inadequate tracking of complaints. But wait, it gets worse. In November 2023, a 3-day power outage affected over 2,000 inmates at RJD, leaving them without running water, working toilets, heat, or the ability to heat food. Caused by damaged transformers, the outage raised concerns for inmates with medical needs, such as those requiring CPAP machines or dialysis, the type of medical equipment Suge might need given his health conditions. The facility has also seen violent incidents that contribute to its harsh environment. In May 2021, inmate John R. Thurs was killed in a homicide by 3 inmates on a recreation yard, stabbed with an inmate-manufactured weapon. More recently, in February 2025, inmate Nelson Barrera allegedly attempted to stab an officer, highlighting ongoing safety risks for both staff and inmates. Now, you might be wondering what Suge's specific housing situation is like given his celebrity status. Suge's notoriety as a former gang member, affiliated with the mob Peru Bloods, and high-profile figure likely places him in a higher security level, possibly the Sensitive Needs Yard, SNY, for protection. This could mean more restricted movement and greater isolation. The combination of overcrowding, potential shared cells, and his health issues suggests that his cell may be cramped, with limited space for medical equipment or accessibility needs, especially given his blindness. Too Short, who spent 5 weeks in Los Angeles County Jail in 2015, shared that he was placed in the visitation area next to Suge multiple times. He described both of them as shackled the up in the orange jumpsuits, suggesting that even during visitation, Suge was under strict security measures.
Yeah. We both like shackled the up in the orange jumpsuits.
Oh my God.
With the orange top and bottoms, yeah.
This level of restriction has likely continued at RJD, especially given Suge's high profile and the nature of his conviction. Compared to standard prison conditions, RJD's overcrowding and history of mistreatment, particularly for disabled inmates, indicate that Suge's experience is likely more challenging than most. The small cells, inadequate medical care, and potential for abuse create a living situation that would be difficult for anyone, let alone someone with Suge's health issues. Despite these harsh conditions, Suge has maintained communication with the outside world, as evidenced by his podcast. He has also reportedly been buying cars for women from prison, suggesting he still has access to funds and a support network. During an interview with DJ Vlad, Mob James claimed,
Suge got people that's taking care of him, got money. He buying women's cars from prison.
He bought a woman a car from prison.
Yeah, he buying women cars from prison.
Okay.
So where do you think he getting his money from?
I have no idea.
Man.
I've never actually spoken to Suge.
Well, I'm gonna say he got good friends like Ray J and
But while Suge may have financial support from the outside, money can only do so much to improve conditions behind bars. The daily realities of prison life, the noise, the lack of privacy, the constant vigilance needed to avoid confrontations, the limited access to amenities, remain unchanged. For someone who once lived a life of luxury, the adjustment to prison would be jarring. Suge went from calling the shots at one of the most successful record labels in hip-hop history to having every aspect of his life controlled by prison authorities. From when he eats to when he sleeps, from who he can talk to what he can own, everything is dictated by prison rules and schedules. A typical day in prison starts early, often around 6 a.m., with inmates required to be up and ready for the first count of the day. Meals are served at set times in the dining hall, with breakfast usually between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m., lunch around noon, and dinner between 5 and 6 p.m. The food is basic at best, with limited options and portions. Between meals, inmates might have jobs or programs, but with Suge's health issues, his participation in these activities might be limited. Recreational time, if available, would be in the yard or common areas, but again, his vision impairment would likely restrict what he can do. The noise level in prison is another factor that most people don't consider. Prisons are loud, really loud. Between the shouting, the banging of doors, the intercoms, and the general cacophony of hundreds of men living in close quarters, the noise is constant. For someone trying to sleep, think, or simply find a moment of peace, this constant din can be deeply distressing. Then there's the lack of privacy. In a shared cell, even the most basic bodily functions are performed in full view of your cellmate. Using the toilet, changing clothes, attempting to maintain personal hygiene, all are done with little to no privacy. This loss of dignity is one of the most challenging aspects of incarceration for many inmates. For Suge specifically, his blindness would make navigating this environment even more difficult. Imagine trying to find your way around a noisy, crowded prison when you can't see clearly. Simple tasks like getting to the dining hall, avoiding obstacles in your path, or identifying who's approaching you become major challenges. So, how did Suge Knight, once one of the most powerful men in the music industry, end up in such dire straits? Let's rewind the tape and check the backstory on how the big homie traded in his executive suite for a prison cell. The concrete jungle, how Suge ended up behind bars. For those who've been living under a rock, Suge Knight is currently serving a 28-year bid for a fatal hit and run that went down back in 2015. This wasn't just some minor offense. This was a whole situation that changed the trajectory of his life forever. Let's rewind to January 29th, 2015. Suge was at a burger stand in Compton. Yeah, Compton, the hood where it all began for him. There was some type of beef brewing with CLE Bone Sloan, who was a consultant on the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton. Words were exchanged, tensions flared, and before you know it, Suge was behind the wheel of his Ford F-150 Raptor pickup truck. Security footage caught Suge backing his truck into Sloan, injuring him, and then, and this is where things went left, driving forward and striking Terry Carter, a 55-year-old businessman and community mediator, killing him on the spot. Suge Knight claims he was ambushed and acted in self-defense, but prosecutors weren't buying that story. They argued the act was intentional, possibly fueled by anger over his portrayal in the Straight Outta Compton film. Initially, Suge was facing murder charges, which could have landed him in prison for life without the possibility of parole. But on September 20th, 2018, just days before jury selection was set to begin, Suge took a plea deal, copping to voluntary manslaughter. The sentencing went down on October 4th, 2018, resulting in that 28-year bid I mentioned earlier. The math behind the sentence is wild. 11 years for the manslaughter charge, doubled to 22 years under California's 3 strikes law due to Suge's prior felony convictions, plus an additional 6 years for various enhancements. Now, this wasn't Suge's first rodeo with the law. The man has a rap sheet longer than a CVS receipt. Back in the day, he caught a 9-year sentence in 1997 for a probation violation related to an assault at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Yeah, the same night Tupac was fatally shot, with Suge in the driver's seat. He only ended up serving about 5 years of that sentence, getting released in August 2001.
I feel like this. I feel that the last word is always God. But Pac saved my life. The reason why I say Pac saved my life, I got shot in the head, got grazed some other places, but I still got the bullet in my head. They're still there.
Since being locked up in 2018, Suge hasn't just been sitting on his hands. In 2023, the big homie filed an appeal to overturn his sentence, claiming his civil rights were violated during the trial. He said he was incorrectly assigned 3 strikes, denied the right to represent himself, and faced issues with prison housing, the COVID-19 pandemic, and losing sight in one eye. But in March 2025, Judge Laura F. Priver shut that down, saying Suge waited too long to file and wasn't sincere in his claims. His lawyer, David Kenner, called the decision shocking and unconscionable, claiming it was legally improper. But at the end of the day, Suge is still locked up and likely will be for a minute. With his parole eligibility not coming until October 2034, the former music mogul is facing a significant stretch behind bars. Now, Suge ain't your average inmate. This is a man who once ruled the hip-hop world, a key player in the careers of legends like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and the late, great Tupac Shakur. He was the architect behind Death Row Records, which dropped classics like Dr. Dre's The Chronic and Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style. At the height of his power, Death Row was generating over $100 million annually. The man went from mansions and luxury cars to a cell at Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, surrounded by concrete walls instead of platinum plaques. Suge isn't the only high-profile inmate at RJD. The facility has housed several notorious figures over the years, including the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric, who were convicted of murdering their parents in 1989. There's also Anna and John, fashion designer convicted of rape, Charles Ray Merritt, convicted in the McStay family murders, and James Mitchell, heir to the Mitchell brothers' adult film business, convicted of murder. Sirhan, the assassin of Robert F. Kennedy, was also previously housed there. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but Suge's probably getting special treatment, right? He's Suge Knight. Nah, that ain't how it works, especially not at RJD. In fact, his celebrity status might be making things worse for him in some ways. When you're a high-profile inmate, you're under constant scrutiny from both staff and other inmates. Plus, Suge has some serious health issues that complicate his situation even further. Remember when I mentioned that Suge claimed to be losing his sight in one eye? That wasn't just an excuse for his appeal. The man has been dealing with blindness and other health complications since at least 2015. During a Los Angeles Superior Court hearing in March of that year, Suge stated he was blind in one eye and had only 15% vision in the other, attributing this to inadequate medical treatment while in custody. On top of the vision issues, Suge has been dealing with blood clots since getting shot 6 times at a pre-VMAs party in Los Angeles in August 2014. These blood clots, particularly in his lungs, have been a recurring and serious concern. In 2018, Suge's son, Jacob Knight, expressed worry about his father's health, specifically highlighting the blood clots as requiring immediate and consistent care. There have also been reports that Suge suffers from diabetes, which was mentioned by his son in that same 2018 interview with TMZ. Managing diabetes in a prison environment is challenging enough, but when you add blindness and blood clots to the mix, you're looking at a serious health situation that requires specialized care that many inmates claim is inadequate at RJD. Despite these challenges, Suge has found ways to maintain a presence in the outside world. In October 2023, he launched a podcast called Collect Call with Suge Knight, recorded from prison. The podcast covers hip-hop culture and personal anecdotes, giving Suge a platform to share his perspective and stay connected to the industry he once dominated. With his medical conditions and the harsh living environment at RJD, Suge's present situation is grim enough. But what does the future hold for the former Death Row CEO? Let's take a look at the aftermath of his incarceration and what it means for his legacy in hip-hop. The aftermath from Death Row to Donovan and beyond. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, what this whole situation means for Suge, for hip-hop, and for the people still connected to him on the outside. First off, let's talk about how Suge's health has been affected by his time in prison. As I mentioned earlier, dude's been dealing with some serious medical issues, including blindness in one eye, blood clots, and diabetes. Prison ain't exactly known for its premium healthcare plan, and RJD specifically has a sketchy track record when it comes to caring for inmates with medical needs. In a 2023 appeal to overturn his sentence, Suge claimed claimed that his permanent prison housing, the COVID-19 pandemic, and losing sight in one eye negatively impacted his ability to file for appeal in a timely manner. This suggests that his health issues have worsened during his incarceration, particularly his vision problems. The poor conditions at RJD, including overcrowding and inadequate medical care, are likely exacerbating Suge's health challenges. Cells designed for one inmate often house two, and the facility has faced allegations of abusing disabled inmates, including reports of officers tipping over wheelchairs and using pepper spray on mentally ill convicts. For someone with Suge's medical needs, these conditions could be life-threatening. The podcast has also been a vehicle for Suge to address rumors and make statements about other figures in the hip-hop world. In September 2024, he used the podcast to warn Diddy, saying, "I'll tell you what, Puffy, your life is in danger because you know the secrets of who's involved in that little secret room you guys are participating in. You know they're gonna get you if they can." This statement, made shortly after Diddy's arrest on charges including sex trafficking, has fueled speculation about what Suge knows and his relationships with other industry figures. Speaking of other industry figures, let's talk about Suge's relationship with his former artists, particularly Snoop Dogg. The two were once closely associated through Death Row Records, but their relationship has been strained for years. Suge has accused Snoop of contributing to Tupac's downfall, and tensions between them have been well documented. Interestingly, in April 2023, Snoop made a statement saying, "I love that man, he changed my life," referring to Suge despite their past issues. This suggests a complex relationship that has evolved over time, with Snoop acknowledging Suge's role in his career while maintaining distance. Dr. Dre, another Death Row alumnus, has maintained even more distance from Suge, with limited public comments since leaving the label in 1996. Their relationship has been notoriously strained, and there's little evidence of any reconciliation. Now let's talk about the legal battles that continue to shape Suge's future. In 2023, Suge filed an appeal to overturn his 28-year sentence, claiming his civil rights were violated during the trial. However, on March 4th, 2025, Los Angeles County Judge Laura F. Priver denied the appeal, ruling that Knight waited too long to file and was not sincere, citing his ability to file other motions. Despite this setback, Suge's legal team continues to fight. His attorney, David Kenner, called the decision shocking and unconscionable and legally improper, suggesting that they plan to continue pursuing legal avenues for Suge's release. In addition to his criminal case, Suge also faced a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Terry Carter's family. In May 2025, Knight paid $1.5 million to settle the lawsuit, avoiding a retrial that had been scheduled for November 2024. The settlement closed a significant civil aspect of the 2015 incident, though Carter's family expressed mixed feelings about the resolution. With his parole eligibility not coming until October 2034, Suge is looking at potentially spending the next decade or more at RJD, facing the same harsh conditions and health challenges. By that time, he'll be 69 years old, having spent a significant portion of his later years behind bars. This raises questions about what Suge's legacy will be in the hip-hop world. Will he be remembered as the intimidating force behind Death Row Records, the man who helped bring West Coast rap to the forefront of the music industry, or will his legal troubles and imprisonment overshadow his contributions to the culture? The truth is, Suge's legacy is complicated. He was undeniably a pivotal figure in hip-hop, playing a key role in the careers of some of the genre's biggest names and helping to establish the West Coast sound in the mainstream. But his aggressive business tactics, legal issues, and alleged involvement in industry violence have cast a long shadow over his achievements. For the artists who passed through Death Row, particularly those who achieved massive success, their relationship with Suge and the label is part of their story, a chapter in their rise to fame. But for Suge himself, Death Row was the pinnacle of his success, making his fall from grace all the more dramatic. From ruling the hip-hop world to living in a cramped cell at RJD, Suge's journey is a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. The man who once intimidated the entire music industry is now at the mercy of prison guards and administrators, his health declining and his freedom severely restricted. What's wild about Suge's case is how it fits into the broader pattern of how rap stars and music executives from the hood are treated in the prison system. While Suge's experience is uniquely his own, many other hip-hop figures have faced similar challenges behind bars. Looking at other rapper inmates, we see varied treatments that often depend on celebrity status and personal behavior. Some benefit from better conditions through prison jobs that grant more privileges, like Lil Wayne during his 2010 bid at Rikers Island. Wayne secured a job as a suicide prevention aide, which was the highest paying inmate position and allowed him better treatment, including more showers and phone time. But flip side, Bobby Shmurda reported facing racially charged harassment from guards during his time at Clinton Correctional Facility, specifically because of his rap star status. And Meek Mill described harsh conditions, including solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, poor food, and sleeping on concrete during his bid. For Suge specifically, his notoriety works against him in many ways. Unlike some lower profile inmates who might fly under the radar, Suge is Suge's fame and controversial history make him a target for both staff and other inmates. His health issues are just one more burden he carries in an environment that's already challenging for a perfectly healthy person. What's particularly ironic about Suge's situation is how it mirrors aspects of death row. Record's own branding. The label that took its name from prison terminology now has its founder experiencing the harsh reality behind that metaphor. The man who marketed and sold the image of street life and its consequences is now living those consequences firsthand. For the hip-hop community, Suge's story serves as a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. From controlling one of music's most influential labels to being at the mercy of prison guards and administrators, his journey illustrates the precarious nature of success in an industry often intertwined with street life. As we reflect on Suge Knight's prison cell and the conditions he faces, it's clear that the reality is indeed worse than most people imagine. Beyond the physical confines of a cramped, possibly shared cell, there's the daily struggle with health issues, the potential for abuse as a disabled inmate, and the constant threat of violence in an overcrowded facility with a troubled history. For a man who once commanded respect and fear throughout the music industry, this new reality must be particularly jarring. The contrast between his former life and his current circumstances couldn't be more stark, yet somehow, Suge endures, continuing to make his voice heard despite everything. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.